right, well, good morning, everybody. This is meteorologist Andrew Pinero with this tropical update, and this is going to be a very interesting one because it is fairly close to when the event is happening, which is tomorrow. So I'm just going to jump right into some things. We're going to take a look at what's going on out there now with some satellite and radar. Then we're going to take a look at the weather story from the National Weather Service, the National Hurricane Service. And then we're going to finish off taking a look at the models and some upper air data just to see kind of what's going to happen with Henri as it makes its close approach to our area. All right, so let me transition on over here. So the first thing up here is just the radar. Now, we're not going to see too much because Henri is still mostly out in the Atlantic Ocean near Bermuda. But we could see some of the outer bands are starting to make their way in. So here we're going into, say, Toms River, Long Branch, Atlantic City, all around the Jersey Shore there. That's where we're starting to see some of these bands come through. And we can see also there's some heavier rain that's still out into the ocean, but if you are standing on the shoreline, you're probably seeing those darker clouds looking out into the Atlantic. So that's on its way, and again, that's the outer bands from Henri. Now, switching over to a little bit of some satellite here, we can see a bit of a better picture with Henri. Now, right now, let's actually take a quick peek to see if Henri is a tropical storm still, or if it actually upgraded to a hurricane. So let's pull that up from the National Hurricane Center here. And yes, as of 11 a.m., it looks like the tropical storm Henri has now become Hurricane Henri, or Henri, with 75 mile per hour sustained winds at the core, which is 1 mile per hour over a Category 1. So 74 mile per hour is the baseline for Category 1 hurricane. So Henri here is definitely a hurricane. And also, you're seeing Grace here. Grace is basically just staying south going through Mexico, so we're not even going to talk about Grace. And there is another disturbance that's coming off the west coast of Africa, which is usually the beginnings of tropical systems coming through the east coast. So that's something maybe in the next week or so we'll take a look at. Okay. So that's what we're seeing here. Tropical or Hurricane Henri. And what I'm also going to bring up from the National Hurricane Center is a couple things. The first one is going to be the cone of uncertainty. Now, with the cone, this is really just where the eye wall is going, or the eye of the storm is going to go through. This is not the actual size of the hurricane or the only impacts of the hurricane. So it looks like here, 8 a.m. Sunday, this is where it's still a hurricane as it's starting to make a very close approach. And based on some of the forecast models that we're going to take a look at in a second, I think there is going to be a pretty good certainty of a landfall along Suffolk County, Long Island, the south shore of Long Island. The question becomes, once it makes landfall, what's going to happen after that? So we'll take a look at that in just a minute. But for here, at least, it looks like the storm has picked up speed. It was moving north at about 7 miles per hour last night. Now it's moving north-northeast at about 14 miles per hour. So it's about doubled its traversal speed. So that is where it's pulling in all this Atlantic warm water energy. So we're seeing it intensify. And on the satellite image, this is where we're seeing that darker red. That is actually where we're seeing the core of the storm. Now, there's no defined eye at the moment, so it's not a completely well-organized system. But if I take a look at the visible satellite, you can see there's two frames of motion. You have the typical counterclockwise rotation in the northern hemisphere from the center of the low, but also we have clockwise rotation with the hurricane at the upper levels of the atmosphere. We see these bands moving clockwise. This is the outflow. With low pressure at the surface, if it's sucking all the air in because it's lower pressure in the middle, it has only one place to go because the water doesn't move. It has to go up. And when it goes up, it then has to flow out. And when it's flowing out here, that's actually a sign of an intensifying hurricane or a tropical system. But there's still no defined eye yet. But we are seeing these thunderstorms around what would be the eye popping up. So that's what we're seeing at the moment there. Again, with the cone, it's fairly certain it's going to make landfall along Long Island. Now, the question becomes what happens after that, because we do have some dynamics to talk about in the 500 millibar level, upper atmosphere stuff. Because once it hits land, it basically just stalls right there. And then those upper air dynamics actually play a bit more of a key factor versus the traversal speed of the hurricane. All right, so let's take a look here from the National Weather Service. They did put key takeaways from, let me see if they updated this. They still have this as of 9:04 p.m., so they didn't actually update this yet, but some of their key takeaways: damaging to destructive winds likely across Long Island, coastal Connecticut, and major life-threatening inundation threat across vulnerable coastal locales along eastern Long Island Bay, the Twin Forks, most of the Long Island Sound and ocean beachfront. So with this system, we're going to be seeing quite a bit of water coming in, being pushed in from the ocean. That's what's going to cause the storm surge, which is one of the biggest life-threatening parts of a hurricane, is the storm surge. We're also having widespread urban and small stream flash flooding along all the streams and rivers going into the tri-state region. Dangerous marine conditions expected across the coastal waters Saturday night through Sunday night. So if you have a boat that is out in the water right now, you might want to try and consider taking it out of the water, because there could be some pretty dangerous storm surge and waves coming from that. So that may cause damage to any boats that are remaining in the ocean. So you might want to consider pulling that out. Okay, so let's start now taking a look here. I have the surface analysis up, and we're seeing, it looks like right there, that little bullseye. That's the hurricane. And that is where it's right now in the warmest part of the ocean. So it's seeing, or not the warmest part of the ocean, but warm waters in the ocean. And that's the fuel for all tropical systems. Now let's start taking a look at the forecast models. I'm going to rewind this a little bit here. So this is the GFS, and this is the 6Z run. So from the GFS here, we're seeing a pretty intense hurricane here, 977 millibar low. And it looks like it's right along the Twin Forks that it's going to make landfall. And that's where it can be maybe 50 miles east or west of this, but I still think right around Long Island, that's really the heart of it. And then with this particular forecast model, this is one of the two camps that we're seeing. One of them is it's going to make, Henri is going to make landfall in Long Island and then continue north. And then we're just going to really have wind around the area and some scattered rain. Could be some brief downpours, but nothing really tropical system-like. So that's the camp one, is it hits Long Island, makes landfall there, and then continues due north. And that's what the GFS is showing here. And the landfall looks like it could be around 18Z Sunday, which is about 2 p.m. So this is something that has been pretty consistent throughout all these forecast models. So now when we take a look at the Euro from Tropical Tidbits, now we're on Pivotal Weather. This is also showing a very similar system. And this is the 0Z run of the Euro. So this is where it's looking like it's still going to make landfall in Long Island. This is also targeting a little bit western part of the Twin Forks region. But once it does make landfall, look at this pretty harsh hook left. That means it's going to pretty much follow the Long Island Sound west into New York City and then follow through northern New Jersey, the Hudson Valley, and start to diminish after that. And that is some pretty heavy rain that we're seeing with those bright yellows and oranges and reds. So this is something that is the second camp, where it's going to hit Long Island for a landfall, and then it's going to stall there, and the upper dynamics that we'll take a look at next are going to cause this to be pulled westward into the East Coast. And then once this happens, it's actually going to stay for a pretty good amount of time. So this is showing 8 a.m. Monday. It's still just in there through Albany is the core of it. That's kind of where the low is, but still Sullivan, Ulster, Dutchess County. That looks like we could still be seeing some pretty good winds, and we're still seeing the rain from that system. And then it starts making its way out by Monday evening, going into New England. So from the Euro here, it looks like it goes north, hits Long Island, turns west, then turns north, then turns east into New England. So now, I usually don't follow this particular forecast model because those that have followed the channel and Joe Chaffee's channel know that the Canadian forecast model is trash, so we really don't use this, except in scenarios like this where you really want to look at everything that is possible. So here, with the Canadian, it looks like it's fairly close to the Euro and the GFS for the landfall at least, and it's showing that same time frame, 18Z Sunday. So that looks like it's going to hit the Twin Forks there, and then let's see what happens after. It makes that left-hand turn into, not necessarily the New York City area, but it looks like it hits the Long Island, Twin Forks area, moves north a little bit into Connecticut, then makes the westward turn into the Hudson Valley and the Albany region of New York. And then it starts to just diminish through there, but we're also still seeing some pockets of some pretty heavy rain remaining with this through Monday night into Tuesday. So this is more of a prolonged system if we take a look at the Canadian here. The next one here I want to take a look at is the Icon model, which is the German model. Not a bad model, but it's kind of like a hit or miss. It's really good when it's on, but when it's off, it's not so good. So here, we have the same exact thing where it looks like it goes pretty much north and makes a landfall. This is saying right around 15Z on Sunday, so a little bit earlier. But it's also making, once it hits landfall, it's making that westward turn into what looks like northern New Jersey, New York City, the Hudson Valley, southwest Connecticut. That's where the heart of it is staying. And then it doesn't really diminish at all going into the overnight hours, Sunday into Monday. It stays pretty strong there as it continues into New York and then Pennsylvania. So this is moving a little bit more west than any of the other forecast models, bringing that heavy rain as far west as Pennsylvania. So that's where coastal flooding is going to happen again along the coast, but the flooding potential from this tropical system can still happen as far west as going into Pennsylvania. So that's the Icon. The last one here I want to take a look at is going to be the NAM. So let me rewind this. And this is where it's actually in pretty good agreement with timing-wise, not like the Icon, but the Canadian, the Euro, and the GFS. So there's the outer bands hitting Long Island. This one actually starts to make the turn westward before landfall. So that means it looks like it's starting to make landfall right around Nassau, Suffolk County instead of the Twin Forks. So we're getting a little bit more agreement now on that narrower band. So that's where it looks like the heaviest part of the rain is taking over the entire northern half of New Jersey and Pennsylvania. And that means not just the strong winds, but damaging rains, torrential, treacherous rains that could cause a lot of problems through roadways, any travel, anything like that. So with the NAM here, it's also slightly different for the output than what we're seeing with the other models because this is near surface reflectivity versus 3-hour rainfall totals that we saw in the other models. So this is basically simulated radar. So with this model, it looks like the simulated radar showing the first bands starting to enter Long Island right around 6 a.m. Sunday. And then the landfall happens again right around 1 p.m., 2 p.m. time frame. But the heaviest rain is already through New York City at that point. And then once it gets through there, it really stalls. So landfall in, say, Nassau County at 2 p.m., and then it stays in the area until about, what is this? This is 2 a.m. Tuesday. So from about, say, 2 p.m. Sunday until 2 a.m. Tuesday, the NAM here is showing that it's going to stay in this area. Now, what's causing it all this issue? Well, it's the upper air dynamics. So we're going to take a look at that now here. And this is the 500 millibar vorticity, cyclonic vorticity and wind in knots. So here, right there, that is Henri. Now, if you notice here, we also have the wind marks. So as Henri here on the GFS, the 6Z run of the GFS, makes its way through, look at the flow on the western part of the map. So like Ohio, that has a due south flow. We're going from the north to the south. So this is where we're really seeing this pull. We have that counterclockwise rotation for Henri, which is a tropical system. So a hurricane still looks like at that point. And then we have the flow here heading from the east to the west, turning from the north to the south. That southerly flow is then what's kind of pulling Henri into the tri-state region, because it's all just one big cyclone where we're having that southerly flow over the western Pennsylvania, Ohio region, West Virginia, and that is kind of like a little marionette kind of style duet with dancing in the upper atmosphere here, where we're seeing that system move south, which is pulling Henri north and then west. The question is, when is that westward turn going to actually happen? That's a big question, and that can change the forecast after the landfall in Long Island. So that's the GFS. Here on the Euro, we're seeing something very similar where we're having that southerly flow from the north to the south over that West Virginia, Ohio, Western Pennsylvania region. And that's causing that little like orbiting or dancing in the atmosphere between those two systems. So that's what will be causing that to pull. Now, what was interesting was the GFS actually showed that on the 500 millibar chart, but it didn't show that on the surface or the mean surface level. So I think the GFS may change and start bringing in that westward turn because it's showing it here on the 500 millibar level. Just like the Euro, it shows it on the 500 millibar level where it goes through Long Island. And because of what's happening in that West Virginia, Ohio, Western Pennsylvania area, it's pulling Henri into the tri-state region. So that's the Euro with the 500 millibar chart there. And then once Henri gets past the New York City area, the dynamics on both sides become pretty steady. So that's what causes Henri to really stall in place. So now the 500 millibar level on the vorticity advection here with the Canadian. This is actually going to cause a little bit of an issue because the 500 millibar level and the actual forecast or the mean surface level, they don't really match up too well because it doesn't show too much vorticity advection until it's right at landfall. But that could be enough. When we have that flow over that Ohio, West Virginia kind of area, that's what's going to pull this system westward. So that's the Canadian. Then the icon here, it's just not as strong. There it is. It's still doing that westward pull, but it doesn't actually get as strong in the upper levels until after landfall. So those are the very minute details that could cause either a kind of like glancing blow through New York City or a due west pull straight through New York City into New Jersey and Pennsylvania. So then the NAM here, the last one, this is also showing some pockets of some pretty good vorticity advection in the 500 millibar level. In, again, that Ohio, West Virginia, Western Pennsylvania kind of region going even as far south as Virginia and North Carolina. And that's what could be causing this duet dance in the upper atmosphere that will pull Henri. This one, again, with the NAM, was the furthest west, where it looks like landfall is going to be right around the Nassau-Suffolk County border in Long Island, and then head straight over New York City into northern New Jersey and the Hudson Valley, and then it spreads out, and the heaviest rain will be spread out through there. So there's a lot of different dynamics in here, and this is where we're definitely going to have to keep an eye on this. I'm going to see if I can have an update for you guys later tonight. All right, so that pretty much wraps up this tropical update. I wanted to keep it around, say, 20-25 minutes for this, but this is something that can be very life-threatening in certain scenarios, and I definitely think Long Island is going to be the heart of this, where the landfall is actually going to be happening. So if you are in Long Island, I would definitely say take the time today to prepare for this. Anything that can be tied down, tie it down or bring it inside. Have provisions, extra water, extra food for a couple of days in case you can't get out of your house. If you lose power, make sure you have extra batteries, flashlights, charge up your phones, charge up any devices you use to communicate with the outside world. All right, so thank you all for watching. This was a bit more of a serious kind of video, but if you are interested in more weather updates and weather videos, whether it's tropical systems or just generic weather forecast, feel free to hit that little subscribe button below and then the bell icon right next to that so you get notified when I upload videos like this, or I do go live sometimes. Thank you all for watching. This is meteorologist Andrew Pinero. Please stay safe through this. Again, I'll try and have some updates a little bit later today, and I'll see you all in the next video.